Let's talk about 9 of the worst natural disasters in human history. Starting off with number 9, the Peshtigo Wildfire. Although it is often overshadowed by another wildfire that occurred on the exact same day, the Chicago Fire, the Peshtigo Wildfire was actually 5 times more deadly than the much more infamous Chicago Fire, claiming roughly 1.5 to 2.5 thousand lives in the span of a few hours. The fire began when a group of railroad workers tried to clear brush in order to lay tracks. However, this brush fire quickly escalated into something much worse. Due to a cold front arriving in the area of Peshtigo, Wisconsin on the day of the fire, extreme wind conditions of up to 110 miles per hour fueled the flames, transforming the bushfire into a firestorm, burning at almost 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. These flames engulfed the surrounding land, scorching the towns of Peshtigo and Brussels in just 2 hours. Victims were either burned alive or suffocated by the smoke of burning buildings. If you managed to make it out of town, many died of hypothermia trying to swim in the nearby Peshtigo River. In the end, the Peshtigo fire burned about 1.2 million acres of land, and the only reason the carnage stopped was because of a stroke of luck. A strong rainstorm put the fire out. While this may have been the deadliest fire in history, it's got nothing on some of the next disasters. Coming in at number 8, we have the most devastating and deadly blizzard of all time. While many see the Middle East as a desert, the region actually experiences extremely cold weather, especially in the case of the 1972 Iran blizzard. The snowstorm lasted for a week and dumped more than 9.8 feet of snow across rural areas in northwestern, central, and southern Iran. This was the result of a week-long period of low temperatures and severe winter storms, leaving a trail of destruction, with several villages lifeless and inhabitable. Additionally, it cut off infrastructure that nearby areas relied on. Whether it was a crashed bus or being buried alive under 10 feet of snow, the blizzard took the lives of around 4,000 people. Moving on to not-so-lucky number 7, we have the Galveston Hurricane of 1900. While hurricanes like Katrina and Ida may be more familiar, the Great Galveston Hurricane is the most deadly weather event in recorded U.S. history. As the name implies, this storm touched down in Galveston, Texas as a Category 4 hurricane, with winds of 157 miles per hour or faster, which is enough to pick up houses and carry them away. While the hurricane weakened once it hit land, it still managed to claim the lives of at least one person in pretty much every state east of Texas. The extreme flooding, along with the wind and weather conditions, killed an estimated 12,000 people, along with causing tens of millions of dollars in damages. The main killer in hurricanes is the storm surge, which is when a large amount of water is pushed onto land by the storm, resulting in extreme flooding. In the case of the Galveston Hurricane, the storm surge reached heights of 15 feet, carrying debris-filled water. If you weren't drowning or stuck in a flood, you could have been hit by a swept-away car or perhaps a horse, considering it was the year 1900. The hurricane even hit Ontario, Canada, where it caused an additional $1.35 million in damages. At number 6, we have the Banqiao Dam Failure in China as a result of Typhoon Nina. The Banqiao Dam had been built on the Ru River in the early 1950s as part of a flood prevention and electricity production program aimed at controlling the Huanghe River. At a height of 387 feet and with a storage capacity of some 17.4 billion cubic feet, it was designed to withstand a 1,000-year flood. The problem was that Typhoon Nina rained so much that there were twice the levels of a regular 1,000-year flood. There wasn't any warning system for any of the people that were downstream of the dam, so you can imagine that once it failed, it was pretty much game over. Obviously, people were caught off guard by the hundreds of thousands of tons of water obliterating their homes, and as you can imagine, a few people died. 26,000 to be more accurate. If you think 26,000 deaths is a lot, the next disaster will be nearly 5 times that. At number 5, we have the Shaanxi Earthquake. Imagine this. You're relaxing in the Wei River Valley all the way back in 1556, when suddenly a magnitude 8 earthquake strikes, a devastatingly catastrophic seismic event, even by modern standards. With the architectural principles available today, a magnitude 8 earthquake would still collapse buildings, but considering the quality of construction in rural China back in the 1500s, it's safe to say it was doing a lot more than that. During this earthquake, the land pretty much split in half. Some reports even recall 20-meter crevices opening up in the ground, which is enough to swallow a 4-story building. Although there likely weren't many 4-story buildings in rural Shaanxi. Still, I wouldn't want to get eaten by a random crevice on a Tuesday. Another significant reason this earthquake was so devastating is because back then, there was no aid available. Over 700,000 people were displaced as a result of famine due to the earthquake destroying farmland and crops. Additionally, it directly killed over 100,000 people, wiping out the entire city of Huangjian. Number 4 is technically another earthquake, but it's the after effects of this earthquake that caused so much destruction. I'm talking about a tsunami. At about 8 a.m. on December 26, 2004, a 9.3 magnitude earthquake struck the coast, and within a few hours, it hit land off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, obliterating pretty much anything in its path. The earthquake occurred between the Indian and Burma tectonic plates, and as a result of the seismic activity, scientists estimate that the entire planet vibrated 10 millimeters. Not only was this one of the strongest earthquakes in modern history, but its tsunami was also one of the most deadly. The tsunami wave reached recorded heights of up to 100 feet tall and speeds of 500 miles per hour when it was out at sea. Although the wave slowed down when it reached the shore, it was still just as powerful. The Indian Ocean tsunami ruthlessly destroyed entire towns and villages, taking the lives of 230,000 people across 14 different countries. Sri Lanka alone had 35,000 casualties, as people were swept away by the tsunami and entire buildings were ripped apart. The waves of the tsunami were so strong that they brought a 2,600-ton cargo ship 1.2 miles inland, where it still sits today. Needless to say, if you were unlucky enough to get stuck in this, you were probably done for. At number 3, we have the 1976 Tangshan Earthquake. Just like the Shaanxi Earthquake, the Tangshan Earthquake happened in China. However, it was about 3 times as deadly due to a whole slew of different reasons. The earthquake was still extremely powerful, coming in at around a Category 7. However, this was still clearly enough to kill hundreds of thousands of people. As you would probably expect, the earthquake collapsed buildings and had all the typical effects that were not so fun. However, in my opinion, the worst fate was that of the coal miners. Mining was very present in Tangshan, and a 7-magnitude earthquake violently shaking the ground around you, especially while there are hundreds of tons of rocks and dirt above you, isn't exactly a formula for success. As you've probably guessed, the earthquake collapsed these mines, burying thousands of miners alive. Additionally, if you didn't get trapped under rubble, you had to dig your way out with no ventilation or lights, because guess what? All that got destroyed too. All in all, it took some of the miners literal weeks to get out of the coal mines, and those were the lucky ones that did make it out. The Tangshan earthquake killed 230,000 people, and also crippled China's railway system in the process, making it arguably the most devastating natural disaster to ever hit China. Coming in at second place is the Bhola Cyclone of 1970. Although the North Indian Ocean is usually the least active of the tropical cyclone basins, the coast of the Bay of Bengal is extremely vulnerable to the effects of tropical cyclones. The exact death toll from the Bhola Cyclone will never be known, but at least 300,000 fatalities were associated with the storm, with potentially as many as 500,000. One of the reasons that the cyclone was so deadly is due to the failures of various disaster warning systems in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. The cyclone made landfall on the East Pakistan coastline during the evening of November 12, 1970. Hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones are all the same swirling hellstorms. They just get different names based on where they form. One of the most gruesome effects of cyclones is a phenomenon dubbed cyclone syndrome. This consisted of severe abrasions on the limbs and chest caused by survivors clinging to trees to withstand the storm surge and debris bashing against them. If it wasn't obvious, this was pretty fatal, along with the standard drowning. The aftermath of the Bhola cyclone was not only bad because of the damages and fatalities, but there were also serious concerns of cholera and typhoid fever outbreaks due to all of the conditions afterward. Typhoid alone kills an extra 200,000 people worldwide every year, but luckily the affected areas were able to avoid any significant outbreak of these diseases. When I mentioned the Tangshan earthquake being arguably the most devastating natural disaster to hit China, I think there's an even bigger argument for the number 1 spot. This is the 1931 Yangtze-Huai river flood, responsible for the direct deaths of around 400,000 people, with an additional 4 million dying indirectly from the flood. Let's cover how something like this even happens. From 1928 to 1930, China suffered from extreme droughts, but that all changed in 1931. Prior to the flood, the area's infrastructure was already ravaged from record 9 cyclones bashing the region, combined with what was described as not even having seasons. What they meant by this is that there was no summer, no spring, no winter, just rain. Even before the floods, hundreds of thousands of people who lived in low altitude areas had to abandon their homes just due to the sheer amount of rain. Unsurprisingly, the floods continued due to more rainfall, and this is when things got really bad. The high water mark recorded on August 19th in Wuhan showed water levels 16 meters or 53 feet above the average, and waterways throughout much of the country were inundated, mainly the Yellow River and Grand Canal. The 8 most seriously affected provinces were Anhui, Hubei, Hunan, Jiangsu, Zhejiang, Jiangxi, Henan, and Shandong, covering an absolutely massive area. All in all, the floods covered 69,000 square miles, equivalent to all of England and half of Scotland. Studies conducted say that at least 150,000 people had drowned in the first few months of the flood, with millions more dying of starvation and disease afterward. And that is just about going to do it for my list. If you've heard of any other crazy natural disasters that didn't make it into this video, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you liked this video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. And if you want to watch another video from me, click right here. YouTube thinks you'll like this one. And to be honest, they're probably right. I mean, like, if anyone knows what YouTube video you might like, it's gotta be YouTube, you know what I mean?